Well, today's message, guys, is out of 1 Timothy chapter 6, and I've titled it Great Gain. Great Gain. So we're in the final chapter of 1 Timothy, and we just have a few more weeks as we're going to close this out. But today, I want to take you to the scripture. So we're going to 1 Timothy chapter 6. We're covering 4 verses, 6 through 10. And so let's go there. It says, "But godliness with contentment is great gain." Can you guys say that with me? We're going to say godliness with contentment is great gain on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Godliness with contentment is great gain. Okay, you guys are pretty good. I'm just seeing if you're with me. It says, "For we brought nothing into this world, and we can take nothing out of it." Come on, isn't that true? You're not born with a little credit card in the crease of your armpit or a checkbook or a wallet, right? We come with nothing. And the Bible's saying that when we leave this earth, even though some people, they get buried with cars and trinkets and watches and stuff, none of that goes with you. It all stays behind. It says, "But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that." What he's saying is, man, if we are people that have the basics, as I said last week, if you have God, you have everything. And God is one who gives us what we need. It says, "Those who want to get rich, though, fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that," let's go to our next verse, "plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs." So here's the thought today. We're diving right in. I want you to write this down. The first thought is this, and you got to remember this, is that godliness with contentment is great gain. Many times we live in a culture where it's just never enough. That we hear that all the time. That's the messaging. You turn on the TV, you look on social media. There are always these ads that are trying to communicate with you and tell you that what you have is outdated. What you have is not as efficient. What you have is not as sparkly. The food you're eating is not flavorful enough. The clothes you're wearing are not fashionable enough. The car that you're driving is old and funky and smells weird. Come on. There's this messaging. You may not realize this, but last year in America, there was $733 billion spent on marketing and advertising. Do you realize that? That's an insane thought. $733 billion. You would think, wouldn't they just use those profits for something else to line their own pockets? No, they understand that they need to communicate something to you and I, that what we have is not enough. And so the thing is this, is that they convince you that if you engage or spend money on this vacation, that it's going to bring some sense of satisfaction and fulfillment. That if you buy this specific car, wear this specific cologne or perfume, if you do this or you do that or you own this or you own that, that somehow that's going to bring some kind of significance and meaning to your life. But you and I both know that it's a lie. So much so that you and I don't realize how much this has been ingrained in us through culture. The tune, just say slogans. You hear this tune, ba 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 ba. I'm loving it, right? What is that? McDonald's. You just heard that little tune. You're like, dang, man, I want some fries, yo. You're already thinking, you've heard this slogan right here. It melts in your mouth, not in your hands. What is that? M&M's, right? Like a good neighbor. State Farm is there, right? You guys, you see how this has been ingrained into us. And so that's not a bad thing necessarily. I applaud these marketing firms and advertising firms. They are doing a heck of a job. Yeah. But we have to be careful with the messaging, because the messaging, if we don't receive it correctly, is that what you have is not good enough and you need something else. Here's a lie that we believe, that many of us have believed and still believe, and we've got to be careful with this. The lie is that what I need most is not here, but it's somewhere out there. And what it does is it puts you on this pursuit. It sends you on this little mission to find significance and to find acceptance, or to find whatever you feel that you're missing, this void that isn't filled. You feel like you've got to find it out there. But let me remind you what I told you last week, according to the Word of God, is that if you have God, you have everything that you need. That there's nothing else that you need, that God is the one who will provide every need that you have. And if you have Him, you have everything. That the search is over. The quest is over. There's no more looking. But what we need to do is we need to slow down enough to make the realization, or to come to the realization that we have what we need. And this is so important because many of us have spent so much time, we spent so much effort chasing the next and the next, and the next. And what it's done is it's tired you out. It's brought you to this place of emptiness. And so let me say once again, 1 Timothy 6:6. But godliness with contentment is great gain. See, as we've learned in this series, especially in chapter 6, is that we are to be a people that pursue godliness. We are people that reflect the glory, the nature, and the attributes of who God is. That everywhere we go, we are a reflection. That when we walk into the room, it's as if God shows up in the room, not calling us gods, but the nature. That God is a God that brings peace, joy, stability. That wherever we are, there's stability, there's peace, there's joy, there's kindness, there's gentleness, there's faithfulness, there's self-control. The Spirit of God is in us, and wherever we go, that's what we take. That is living a godly life. Here's the thing is that we've been given access to it, but the missing component is this, is that we have yet to put this word, contentment, together with godliness. Because when you become content with your godliness, that is from Him, not from us, that is where great gain comes from. That's where you get into this place of just being stable. Whether it's good news, whether it's bad news, whether you have a loaded bank account or you're broke, wherever you're at, you are just stable because you realize that I am content with what I have. I'm content with where I'm at. Why? Because I've got God on my side. I don't need anything else. And I'm going to let Him do a work on the inside of me as He works on everything that is around me. So understand this. This is so important. See, contentment at its core, what it really means is you finding joy in your circumstance. And the word circumstance literally means the circle in which I stand. So let me ask you today, Hub City Church, and those watching online, have you found joy in the circle that you stand in today? Have you found joy with the home that you live in? Are you content with that? So you might say, you know what, I don't have the nicest home. It doesn't have the frills and thrills. You know what? The sink's broken and the dishwasher doesn't work. The toilet leaks and keeps me up all night. But you know what? I am content with what I have because God has given me a home where my wife and I and our children can create memories. It's a place where we laugh together. It's a place where we share meals together. It's a place where people know that when they come here that they are safe and that they are loved. And so although I'm believing for something greater someday, I am content with what I have. I have found joy in the circle in which I stand. For some people, you're looking for other relationships, but you have yet to find the fact or realize the fact that, man, the spouse that you have is the one that God has given you because that's what you need. And we're always thinking, oh, man, there's something better out there. There's something else. That I need a different relationship. I need something different. But listen, there is somebody this week that lost the love of their life to cancer. And with every fiber in their being, they're wishing that person could come back. And sometimes we are not grateful. We are not content. We do not find joy in the circle in which we stand because we're always looking for something else. And God is challenging you and I to find contentment, to couple that with godliness and truly see it as great gain. See, in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 7 and 8, he continues. And he says, for we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. What Paul is trying to convince us of is the fact that we may not always have what we want, but God will always give us what we need. And we will be okay with that. That we need to learn to be a people that are okay with the basics. I know that's so countercultural. You know, culture tells you need more, you need more. It's never enough. You need more. You need something greater, something louder, something brighter, something faster, something, stronger. You always need something else. And God is just saying, listen, if you're going to find true contentment, you got to learn to harness yourself and be okay with the basics. See, this is not something that happens overnight. This is something that you actually have to learn. Listen to what Paul says in Philippians chapter 4, verse 11 and 12. He says, I'm not saying this because I'm in need. He says, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have, here's that word again, learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry. Are you guys seeing this? That this is a learned trait. You must learn to be content. I must learn to be content, to find joy wherever I'm at. Let me just say this, that I think that it would suit you well, especially you parents, in your own home, to bring this into your house as a slogan. Just simply say, we're thankful no matter what. Can you guys say that with me? We're thankful no matter what. See, when your kids complain because they wanted to go to McDonald's and get a Happy Meal, and you're like, no, we're going to eat at home, and they go, oh, man, you just teach them, hey, we're going to be thankful no matter what. When somebody wants to go and do something but money's tight, instead of making that sacrifice and making foolish decisions and ruining yourself financially, to not disappoint somebody, you just say, you know what, we're thankful no matter what. Some of you and your spouse, when you guys get bad news and an unexpected bill comes, you're going to have to encourage one another and say, you know what, babe, we're thankful no matter what. This has to be at the tip of your tongue, that we're thankful no matter what. You're speaking life, you're speaking faith into your situation. And let me just get on a little tiny soapbox. Is that okay? Little tiny soapbox. I want to talk to those of you that are parents here today, because you must teach your children how to be content. See, we live in a nation that is so blessed. You may not realize this, but if you make $60,000 collectively after taxes, that's husband and wife, or if you do it alone, if you make $60,000 after taxes, you are in the 1% of the most wealthy people on this planet. See, you don't think of that because we live in this blessed nation that the marketing is all, you don't have enough, there's more. You don't have enough, there's more. The next. But realize this, that you and I living in this state and in this country, we are so blessed that we are some of the richest people on the planet. And we're not content. We're not content. We're not happy. And what happens is that some of us are so blessed that we can't say no to our children. So we bless. Yes. You want money? You want this? Yeah, we'll do it. Oh, you want to go here? Yeah, we'll do it. And you don't tell them no. And let me just be honest with you. Having raised 2 adult children now, you are setting them up for financial ruin. Because let me help you understand just a simple principle. Is that often what young people do is they go and they take out student loans. And instead of using those loans only for college, they start spending the money, sinking themselves into debt to buy a car, to buy this, to buy that. What are they trying to do? They're trying to emulate the lifestyle that you provided for them, but you didn't educate them on the fact that it took you decades to buy the house. It took you decades to have a brand new car. It took you decades to have a big screen TV. It took you decades to have a garage full of really cool tools and trinkets. And so what they do is they get so used to that lifestyle, and we don't teach them that as soon as they come out of the house, they want to have a big screen TV. They want a brand new car. They want a garage full of tools and toys. Are you guys getting what I'm talking about here? And what ends up happening is we set them up for financial ruin because somebody along comes and says, hey, I can give you a loan for that. And all of a sudden they're sunk into financial ruin. Why? Because we didn't teach them to be content. Here's the thing is, let me just give you a little advice. Learn to say no every once in a while. Learn to say no. It's going to hurt you probably more than it'll hurt them because you're going to feel like a bad mom or a bad dad, or they might go to their room and cry and, oh my gosh. That is not the end of the world because you're preserving them to have a blessed and prosperous future, not only focused on the here and the now. Hear me, parents. This is one of the most important things you must hear, because Paul then goes on to give us a warning. And the warning is this, is that you can either put godliness and contentment together and have great gain, or you can choose to live this way, which is point 2 that I want you to see, is that discontentment leads to greed. Discontentment leads to greed. See, 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 9 says this, those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. You guys catching this? That if we don't teach people to be content, if we don't learn to be content and happy with what we have, it will plunge us into ruin and destruction through greed. And this is a little thought that maybe you've never heard of, maybe you've heard this word. But hedonic adaptation or hedonic treadmill is a term that psychologists use. And what it describes is that euphoria of, I'm going to buy a new car. So you put all these hours into searching out the best car to buy, right? Or the best clothes or the best, vacation. You're thinking of all these things. So you're so engaged and really excited. And it's like, whoop. And then you achieve it. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. People shedding tears because they got a new iPhone. People shedding tears because their dream came true. They got to go here, they got to go there, they got the new car. And I'm all for that. That is so cool. But what you know and I know is that only lasts for so long. The high, and then all of a sudden the car payments come. And it's this big crash where you go below baseline. Some of you are so stressed out every month that credit card finally comes in because you're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to pay that? It was fun in the moment, and then there's this big crash. And then all of a sudden you get back to baseline, and then there you are on the cycle again. Oh man, what's next? Oh man, we got to go shopping. And you're way up and you're way down. This is why it's called a treadmill. The hedonic treadmill. It's this high, high, low, low, high, high, low, low. And many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's how you live your life. It's never enough. See, the Bible talks about the hedonic treadmill in Ecclesiastes 5:10 from one of the wisest men ever to walk the face of the earth. If we can go there. Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless. And here's the thing that's really sad about a treadmill is a treadmill demands the same effort of running, but you don't get to go anywhere. And here's the thing that many of us don't realize, that because greed has taken root in our lives. We don't like to call it greed because everybody else is greedy. Oh, those rich people, they're greedy. These politicians, they're greedy. Not me. But the reality is this, is that some of the greediest and stingy people I know are poor people. It influences and touches everybody's life. Because at any point when we don't find comfort and satisfaction in the presence of God, and we're seeking it somewhere else, we're set up for ruin. And we're set up to become greedy people, even if we're Christians. Come on, I'm not trying to smack you. I'm not trying to be harsh or critical. I'm trying to allow us to see the truth so we can be wise, and when we know different, we can then do different. So understand that what the trouble with greed is that greed destroys our capacity to enjoy what we already have. Have you ever had that with your child and it hurts your feelings because at Christmas all they wanted was that one thing, and the next thing you know they're playing with the box? They don't even like the thing that they were crying about. Or you spent money that you didn't have to make somebody's dream come true and they didn't appreciate it like you thought maybe they would. It's because inside there's a dissatisfaction. There's a discontentment that leads to this greed in our hearts where it's just never enough. It's weird how some of us, you can never, you never say, man, I just can't get enough of the gym. I just can't get enough of reading the Bible. I just can't get enough of broccoli. Come on, man, I need more broccoli. It's so weird how when it comes to money, it's one of those things that it just seems like people can never have enough. And there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. Because many of us have been trapped on the treadmill, the hedonic treadmill. It's just never enough. Up and down, up and down, up and down. And I just believe that today that God wants to free all of us from living on the treadmill. He wants to bring freedom. He truly wants us to break through into this realm of living godly lives with contentment and living with great gain. So Paul gives us a final warning in the final verse that I'm going to share with you today. And that's found 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10. This is often one of the most misquoted verses ever. And it's so funny. People that aren't even Christians try to quote it. But it says, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. You guys have heard it this way, right? That money is the root of all evil, right? You guys have heard that? But what you're seeing here is that this is not actually true. It's for the love of money. Money is not bad. Hear me. Money is not bad, okay? It's the love of money. It's the love of money. Is making money, is having more. Is that your passion? Is that what gets you up every morning? Is that the only motivator in your life? Because you're motivated by what you love. And so the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. It's not the root of evil. It's the root of all kinds of evil. People steal because of money. People murder because of money. People get divorced because of money. People betray their own family members. They'll betray their own brother, their own sister for money. There's all kinds of evil that's wrapped up, not in money, but it's the love of money. And it says some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. As a pastor, this is one of the most heartbreaking things is that I've watched people come in, they're broke, they don't have much going for them, they give their life to Jesus. Man, God just starts blessing them. God starts blessing them. All of a sudden, they have opportunities to start businesses, and God prospers their hands. Boom, it takes off. They've got favor upon favor upon favor. God is opening doors. They're walking through. Glory be to God. They're so excited, but then they get a boat, and all of a sudden, they're not at church because they're at the river all the time. They get a new car, and now, well, we got the car, and I don't get to drive it during the week, so now we got to go explore it on Sundays. You can't do it on Saturday. You got to do it on Sunday. There's a spiritual fight for your life. There's a spiritual fight for your children. There's a spiritual fight for your future and for your generations. Hear me. And what he's saying here is that some people, because they've chosen to love money over God, and we don't see it that way, because many times it feels really bad to admit that. It's like, oh, wait, oh man, yeah, I do love money more than God, but I can't tell anybody because that makes me sound bad. But it shows up in the way that we live our lives because they've wandered from the faith and they've pierced themselves with many griefs. Let me just tell you guys, money is not all that it's cracked up to be. That the more you have, many times the more problems come with it. The larger, the bigger problems that you have to solve. See, when you're believing for hundreds, that's one thing. When you're believing for thousands, that's another. Tens of thousands and millions, it's a whole different ballgame. And so many people have incredible stress as they start gaining wealth, because then all of a sudden now they have this fear and anxiety of not being able to trust people around them. It's opened doors in their minds that would have never been opened before. We've got to be careful with this. And what Paul is just telling us is listen, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And here's a thought that you might want to write down, is that money is a great tool, because that's really what it is. Money's a great tool, but it's a terrible master. It's a great tool, but it's a terrible master. If you're living and money is your God, if it's your master, it is relentless. It is relentless. It'll drive you into the ground. It'll wear your body out. It'll destroy your relationships. It'll destroy your self-esteem. It'll steal your peace if you're not careful. It's a great tool because money makes things happen. Churches are built with money. Come on, the gospel's furthered with money. People's needs are met with money. But it's only a tool. It is not my God. It is not your God. It is not to be your master. It is simply a tool in your hand that God uses to make things happen, to build things, and sometimes to tear other things down that don't need to be in our lives. And Jesus speaks to this really clearly in Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. He says this, no one can serve two masters. So like I said, money's a good tool, but it's a terrible master. Nobody can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other. What he's saying is you got to make a choice. Where is your allegiance to? Who's it to? He's saying here that you got to hate one and love the other. It doesn't say you just got to kind of chill on one. You got to hate the other and love one. Or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. Get this. You cannot serve both God and money. We all have a decision that we need to make, and that's what Paul is leading us to do here. He's saying, listen, for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, and we have to make a choice. We have to make a choice. Jesus is saying that a choice must be made. A flag must be planted. And so this is the final point that I'm going to give you today, and I want to talk to you about something that I haven't talked to you as a church about in the 3 years that we've been here. It's really important. It's a subject that makes some people feel uncomfortable in church, but it shouldn't. And I want to invite you into a little secret on living a blessed life. Here's the third thing that I want you to get today, is that you worship God with your tithe. You worship God with your tithe, because the reality is that you could either worship God or you can worship money. And we're going to choose to worship God. And we're going to worship God with our tithe. See, in Malachi chapter 3, verse 10, it says this, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. My house, God speaking of his temple, his place of ministry, really. It says, test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it. Here's the thing, is that if we truly love God and we worship God, that we're not giving to receive, we're giving to honor him and to walk in obedience. This is so important that you get this. See, as a church, we haven't talked about this. I don't talk about this all the time. We don't take up an offering. There's a bucket right there. We say there's ways to give online. Why is this that way? Because strategically, I felt the Lord impress on me to say, you've got to build trust with the people, because some of them have come from churches where they've taken up 2 and 3 offerings and it wasn't enough. Come on, we're going to go a 4th. Come on, I know what that's like. And what we wanted you to see is that we live this, that we were going to trust God, that I didn't feel like I needed to stand in the pulpit every week and browbeat you and tell you, guys, if you don't give, God's not going to provide. Let me tell you this, that our faith and us doing the right thing, us tithing, us being faithful givers and walking in obedience to God has been a blessing. Why? Because this church, since its inception, has never been in the red, not 1 month. We've always had more than enough. We've always had more than enough. We've managed it well. We've done our best to honor God and to honor you and to build trust with you. But over the last few weeks, I feel like the Lord has said you need to challenge them, not just challenge them, but you need to impart the secret of living a truly blessed life. That when people live with greed in their heart, what they do is they choke down the pipeline of blessing in their lives. And that when we begin to take our hand off of it and to trust God and to be content, the blessings begin to flow. And so we're talking about, just for the next few moments, just about tithing. And what does that mean? It means 10%. Literally, that's what the word means. See, in the Old Testament, and this predated the law, it makes me sad that there are people all over social media and all over the internet and everything talking about, well, the tithe is this and you don't need to tithe and this and that. Listen, why would we not want to give to our God? And I don't want to be on the side of trying to err on the side of coming against what God has established, trying to make an argument against what He has instituted and asked us to do. That doesn't even make sense to me. I'm like, do you not fear God? Do you not have reverence and honor for God? Because here's the thing, is that God is not requiring anything of us to take from us to put us at a deficit. What we give to Him brings multiplication. Our God is a God of multiplication and addition, not subtraction and division, church. And so we need to learn to trust Him. And so with our finances, with our life, with our children, with everything that we have, we are willing to say, God, there is no area of my life that is off access, or that you have no access to. There's nothing that is off limits to you, God. You have full access to every part of my life. And so when it comes to the tithe, that God, He requires us that we give the first 10%. And then we steward the extra 90. And you're thinking, man, but we're not even making it on the 100%. How are we going to make it? That's where trust comes in. That's where walking in obedience comes in. Let me tell you this, that your 90 submitted to God is going to go further than 100% that's not submitted. And people don't understand this. And this is why we live by faith. This is a walk of faith. I'm not trying to guilt you. I'm trying to unlock a little secret. See, I am so grateful that my mom and dad taught me when I was a child that when I got $1, I got to take a dime to kids' church, man. I was fired up about that. Whenever I had $10, I got to take a full $1. I was excited that I didn't have to take change. I got to take a $1 bill. Like, that just made my heart happy. And then around my birthday time or Christmas, man, I got more money, and maybe I had $100, and it felt so good to take $10 to honor God with it. That even as a young child that was building the house of God, that was a secret. That was a blessing that my mom and dad imparted to us. And as we got older, yes, it got more difficult. All of a sudden, you make $400, like, dang, I'm going to give $40. Like, wow, like that seems crazy. And then you start making thousands. But here's the thing, is that it is not easy to fight greed, but when your heart is in the right place, you'll do the right thing because it's the right thing. And God blesses us. Guys, I'm telling you, He blesses us when we walk in obedience. See, the tithe is not generosity. A lot of pastors have gotten into that. Church, I just want to thank you for your generosity. If you heard me, I don't say that, because generosity doesn't start until 11%. Obedience is up to 10%. I'm calling it like it is, church, because I want you to be blessed. And I feel like as a pastor, I have a leg to stand on because we have honored you. We have honored the Lord in this house. But it's time to see our church go to a different place. It really is. It's time. I get asked all the time, Pastor, are we going to be in this theater forever? Of course not, because we have vision. I have said this before. I believe that someday that Hub City will have the most beautiful building in Beaumont. I believe to the glory of God, not for us to gloat in. I believe that it'll be something in our city that our city is proud of and that we're proud of to the glory of God, because our God is an extravagant God. Our God is a holy God. Our God is an amazing God. So what we've sought to do, Veronica and I, as lead pastors of this church and our team and everybody, all we can do is steer the ship. God said, go there, man, we're just steering it. We're making sure that our books are in alignment. We're making sure that our accounting firm is tight, that when there's a day when things are ready to go, that we can go. But the church and the church being in alignment with God's plan, what it does is you are the gas pedal. You're the gas pedal. We're just steering the ship, but you get to determine how fast we get there through your obedience to God. So I want to challenge you, church, in 2025, as we get ready to step into this next year, if you're not tithing, husbands and wives, have a chat. And you might say, hey, pastor, we can't do 10% right now, man. We're strapped. We're so much in debt right now. Like, we've got so much going on. You know, we're raising kids and this and that. I'm not going to be one of those people that's like, yeah, but if it ain't 10%, you're out of the will of God. Calamity's coming your way. And if you die, you're going to hell. Like, that's a lie. I'm not trying to coerce you and bend your arm. And I'm trying to invite you into living a blessed life. And so maybe you can only do 3%. Maybe you can only do 5%, but you do it with the intent to say, I'm going to get to 6 and 7. And I'm believing by the end of 2025, we're going to be at full 10%. And I'm believing that someday I'm going to give away 20% because we're so blessed we just have an overabundance. That's the kind of life that God is inviting us to live. I want to share this with you real quick. I saw this, I heard this online, and I'm not going to expound on any of it. I'm just going to read it to you. I want you to get an idea of what does tithing really do? What does giving your first 10% do for you? Because it's not just, yes, we're going to honor God, but I want you to see what it does internally. Listen to what it says here. It says what tithing does. It provides for God's house. It tells God that I trust him. It creates margin for God to fill. You're creating space. You're creating a gap that only God can fill, and he will. It reminds me that I'm not my source. He's my source. It connects my money to kingdom purpose. It transcends this world that we live in. It gives my job eternal significance. Some of you hate your job, but if you start thinking, you know what? Me showing up there every day is going to allow me to fund the kingdom. It changes everything. It transforms my money into a seed. Listen, there's always more fruit in every seed. Understand that it breaks greed off of my heart. It breaks self-reliance off of my heart. And finally, it lets everything else know that God is first. Come on, this is so important. Some of you might need to snap a picture of that real quick. Let me finish off with this real quick. So Veronica and I, some of you know this, some of you don't. We started dating when we were 14 years old, 1990. Come on. Dated all through the end of 8th grade, all through high school. We got married a few years after. But I remember I would do little odds and end jobs for neighbors, and my dad would take me to work sometimes to earn extra money. Veronica always did little things. But even when we were teenagers, guys, we had this bank account, and we would tithe when we were teenagers. And all through our early years of marriage, man, I'm going to tell you guys, we were broke as a joke. When we got married, I was making $7 an hour, and she was balling out. She was making $8. Then she got pregnant a few months into it, and they had to go on disability, which they never paid anyways. So we were trying to live off of $7 an hour, and work got slow. And you know what? God provided for us. There was this couple that came to Veronica that knew her from the school she was working at. And they said, we don't know why, but the Lord has impressed on our heart that we need to give you a percentage of our income, and we don't know how long, but we're going to be obedient. Boom, they cut a check, month 1. Guys, we had $1 left after we paid all of our bills. Month 2, same thing happened. We had $1 left. I'm not lying. Month 3, we had $1 left. And then we never got a check again, but I was back to work. God provided supernaturally. When Veronica was diagnosed with cancer, we got the bill. They said, yes, we accept you into the treatment program, but it's going to cost you $280,000. God provided in 1 week, $280,000. Then we go, well, that's really cool. So the funding for the treatment is good. I mean, $280,000 for 3 months. Come on, guys, that's nuts. And we go, but we don't have a place to live. So we're trying to figure out, okay, we're going to be living in Scottsdale during the week, but we still have to make our home here in Cal Mesa. Now we're trying to do 2 households. They're stressed out. Well, maybe we need to get a loan. Maybe we do this and that. Guys, God's like loan schmoan, man. I'm going to provide. There's a person that was in our church that had a coworker that is a traveling nurse who said, you know what? I would love to bless them, even though this person wasn't a Christian, said, I won't be home back in Arizona until October. The date she came back home was the date she finished treatment, and we lived in that house for free for over 3 months as she underwent treatment. Listen, I'm just trying to tell you that God is faithful. Our families donated, our friends donated, they took care of us. Listen, we didn't have the money, but we've always been faithful to our tithe. And so God made sure that our 90% spent like 150%. He was hitting the awesome meter on our finances. Come on. I just want to encourage you today. You know, God's not a cosmic slot machine. I'm not trying to promise you that if you start giving to the church, that it's all roses and all of a sudden you're going to be wealthy and everything's going to, be perfect, because it hasn't always been perfect. We've went through seasons of bankruptcy. We've been through seasons of difficult hardship, and God's showing up every single time, blessing our socks off, because he's faithful to his word. And so he says to try him, to trust him. I just want to ask you, Hub City, are you willing to even consider it? Are you willing to consider it? I believe that you are. I believe that you're a people that love God and honor him. And I believe that the best is yet to come. But it's gonna be built on us walking in obedience to God. Because see, when we find ourselves in a building and we find all of these things that people, like, oh man, this is what we're believing for. I just want you to know, like, we will never take credit for that. I will never stand on that platform someday and what we actually see and be like, thank you, God, look what we've done. It's you too. It's all of us. It's all of us just walking in obedience. And when we labor together and when we do what God's called us to do, man, guys, I'm telling you, he's going to do exceedingly abundantly above all we can ask, think, imagine. It is going to be so amazing. Did God speak to you today? Come on.